in the field at the John Bunker Sands Wetland Center. My name is Carol Garrison. I'm one of the educators here, and I'm delighted that you've joined me this morning. Unfortunately, Mother Nature kind of altered my plans a bit, and just a second ago it was pouring rain here at the wetland. So my original plan to do a guided pond tour part 2 at the Bunker Pond is not going to happen. Never fear though, I will be doing that live guided pond tour next Saturday at 10 a.m. So, like all other creatures here, and while the rain is going to start again, so I apologize if you hear a lot of the rain in the background. Like all the other creatures here at the wetland, I have to have a high degree of adaptability because the environment is always changing. So plan B is I'm going to give you a great overview and historical perspective on exactly what has happened to here at this land since all the way back in the 1800s. So I'm going to head over to my first storyboard, and we're going to talk about Benjamin Sands. Benjamin Sands came to this particular part of Texas back in 1857 and began management of this property area. His son married Caroline Rose Hunt. Now, during this time, the land was primarily used for ranching, not farming as much. There were some sharecroppers all the way back in the early 1900s, all the way into the 50s and 60s, but the whole opportunity that Mr. Sands had was regarding ranching. Now, we're going to fast forward all the way to the 1970s. In the 1970s, John Bunker Sands became the manager of this property. Now, John Bunker had a wonderful land stewardship attitude about taking care of the land, and he really decided that the intrinsic value of the wildlife and the economic value of the property could be better served. And so all the way back in 1992 he decided to try to build a wetland. Now, I've got an actual drawing of his originally designed wetland that I'm going to show you right here. As you pan over, this is the actual drawing that John Bunker did. You can see it's dated all the way back to 1992. He does have some notes about his ideas. Very forward-thinking gentleman, because all the way back in the early 90s, he was already thinking about mitigation for construction going on in city areas, and so he wanted to come up with a mitigation banking system and then this wetland. Now, this wetland was not his first attempt to really improve the quality of the land. During his property management, he actually traveled to Africa and he learned about holistic ranch management. And during holistic ranch management principles, they frequently rotate the cattle so that their hooves don't impact the soil as much, leading to erosion, leading to topsoil loss, and leading to a decreased ability for the land to grow any type of crop that would be edible for the cattle. He came back to the United States and he implemented the holistic ranch management principles on his properties, and he even went as far as to educate other ranch managers at what a useful principle this is to still take very good care of the cattle, but be a better steward to the land itself. Now let's go back and talk about this property. I'm going to orient you just a little bit so that you can see, because we're going to go into current times, but if you look, this road right here, that is Highway 175. To get you an idea of where we are, this is the northern aspect north of 175, and this is the south of 175. So he drew up his plans. He contacted a firm called Allen Plummer and Associates to draw up some schematics to build this wetland, and all he had to do was flood it. Now, the body of water that he had chosen to flood this water was obviously the East Fork of the Trinity River, which, if it wasn't pouring rain, we would be trekking down to about a half a mile east of here. All he had to do was get permission to flood this wetland, and he was ready to go. Unfortunately, he was not able to get permission to flood the wetland and breach the Trinity River. Now, you're probably wondering, why in the world, if this gentleman was doing so much good for the land, that he was not able to get permission to flood the Trinity River? We're going to put this poster down, and let's go find out why one can't simply breach the Trinity River. The Trinity River Basin is the largest river basin whose water is fully contained within the state of Texas. Estimates of the river's length are between 710 and 715 miles. You can see it starts way up north just below the Red River, and it extends all the way south, and it dumps out into its own bay, the Trinity Bay, which then dumps out into the Gulf of Mexico. Now let's take a look at this Trinity River Basin. It's the dark blue basin. When you look at this basin, you can see that the Rio Grande Basin is quite large. The Colorado River Basin is also large. And look at the size of the Brazos River Basin. Now these basins are not wholly contained within Texas. That's why the Trinity River is so unique. But when you look at this area right here of the Trinity River Basin, what's something that you might come to as a conclusion regarding the population of Texans that are serviced and live off of this basin? They're the highest, it's the most population dense area of Texas. So this river basin is very long. It's the largest wholly contained basin. It's also the basin that deals with the highest population density of Texans. We're going to head over to the next poster, take a look at a little bit of a closer view of the Trinity River and where we are along it. There are 4 forks to the Trinity River: the Elm Fork, Clear Fork, West Fork, and East Fork. 2 of the forks join and actually form the Trinity River just as they enter into the Dallas city limits. The East Fork joins them actually about 2 miles south of here, and that forms what we commonly call the main stem, or the main Trinity River, that goes all the way down to the Trinity Bay. If you look at where we are, here's the Wetland Center right here. So we are actually located right off of the East Fork of the Trinity River after the Trinity River has gone through Lake Lavon and has gone through Lake Ray Hubbard, because Lake Lavon's right here and Lake Ray Hubbard is right there. So when he was trying to get permission to breach this river, he was trying to get permission to breach a vital river that has levees that have been put in place to avoid any type of detrimental flooding. He did not get permission from Congress to flood it. It does actually take an act of Congress to breach a river like the Trinity River, and he had to shelve his plans. Sadly, John Bunker Sands died in 2003 of cancer and was not able to see his dream of a man-made wetland come to pass. However, there is more to this story. So now we're going to introduce the next element into this the amazing history of this property, and we're going to talk about the North Texas Municipal Water District. This is a water district that supplies water to some of the largest and most rapidly growing cities in the North Texas area. We're talking about Garland, Richardson, Plano, Wiley, Forney, Princeton, all the way up into Royce City, all the way into Farmersville. So we're talking about a really expansive area. Let's take a look a little bit closer at the area that they take care of. And I'm going to go right here. The reservoir for the North Texas Municipal Water District, their main one, is Lavon Lake. So their area that they take care of is all the way from Princeton and McKinney and extends all the way down into Mesquite, all the way to here in Kaufman County, where we are actually still getting water from this area. So it's a huge population. Now, the population of Texas really started taking off in the 90s, and the water district realized they needed to do something to provide more water. Now, in the state of Texas, this is a pop quiz. We're going to see how many of you are awake and ready to answer a good question. How many natural lakes do we have in the state of Texas? I want to see if anybody responds real quick. I hope someone said that the answer was 1, because we only have 1 natural lake in the entire state of Texas. It's Caddo Lake. That means that all of these beautiful lakes, like Ray Hubbard, like over here, like Louisville Lake, like Eagle Mountain Lake, these are all man-made lakes. They are reservoirs, and their primary purpose is to store water. We do enjoy recreation off of these lakes, but their primary purpose is to store water for all of the citizens. Well, the water district realized in the 90s that the population of Texas was greatly increasing, and so we needed additional water. You might think the easiest thing to do is simply to build another lake. However, it takes billions of dollars to build a lake. It takes a lot of years, and it takes a lot of land. One of the quicker, easier ways that the water district decided to implement was to build a wetland. So let's talk about how the challenges are about actually getting a wetland. The number one thing you have to have if you're going to use a wetland to help clean and store water is you need to have access to a river. So the first thing they were looking at was the east fork of the river. The other thing that they knew is if they're going to try to increase the water supply, they have to ask themselves, where is this water going to come from? And so what they decided to do was use a wetland to recycle, reuse, and repurpose existing municipal water. Normally, if let's say I live in Garland, so it's real easy for me. We'll pick right there. I'm in Garland, and I take a lovely bath like I did last night. And this morning, I brushed my teeth, and I used the restroom, and I flushed that water. That water is going to go to my nearest waste treatment plant. After the water is treated, it would then flow into a creek, make its way to the east fork of the Trinity River, and then normally it would flow all the way down the east fork. It would head and join the other forks into the main stem, and then head on down to Trinity Bay, correct? However, what they decided to do was, right back here in Garland, we're going to take that toilet water and that bath water. It's going to go to the waste treatment plant just as normal. It's going to flow into the Duck Creek, which is where my waste treatment plant is off. It's going to flow down into the east fork of the Trinity River, and then when it gets right here, something new is going to begin to make this water reused. Now, we're going to leave this map, but we will be back, my friends. We're going to head over to a more detailed map of exactly what is happening to that bath water of mine and that toilet water of mine. This is the actual map of what is now referred to as the East Fork Water Reuse Project, or what we all commonly call the wetland. Now, the wetland has 3 sections, and I'm going to bring back that poster that John Bunker Sands wrote, because I want you to take a good observation and notice that when the Water District decided to create this water reuse project, they really took excellent in John Bunker's design. Can we see how similar these are? There was his first section and his second section. The major difference I think you're going to notice is they really did copy those same first and second sections, but they added a third southern section. So let's talk about what happens to my bath water after it goes to the waste treatment plant and then heads down the Trinity River. Again, I'm going to refresh you. Here's 175, and here is the east fork of the Trinity River waving its way around, all right? And it gets right to the first part of the wetland, which is the diversion pump station. Now, remember, we talked about the fact that John Bunker was not able to breach the river back in the 90s when he was trying to do the wetland. The North Texas Municipal Water District, they do not breach the Trinity River. They have an intake structure that diverts water through a pump so that the levees are intact and all the citizenry around the river is completely safe from any catastrophic flooding. So the water is pulled out at the diversion station, and it sits in this sedimentation basin for about 24 hours. And the reason why it's sitting there is to let the silt and the sediment that is naturally occurring in the Trinity River to fall out. Their plan was on a periodic basis. They were going to drain the basins and scrape all of that sediment and silt out. And they were going to sell it as fertilizer, a genius idea, if I say so myself. But however, in the number of years that they've been running, and I'll tell you how many years that is in just a minute, they have not had to scrape it yet because there's less sediment that they were anticipating. Now, after the water finishes flowing through, sitting in the sedimentation basins for 24 hours, the water is going to be transported to the central section. Now, unlike having an active pump pulling the water out into the intake structure, that pump station, the water is naturally going to flow through this entire wetland through gravity and through the natural angle of the land. Notice this little structure right here. Does everybody see that? That is the gate by which the water is transported from any individual cell to the next. That particular structure is called a weir. Most of you that watched 2 weeks ago should be quite familiar. Do you remember we went and looked at the weirs and how they're quite unique? It's not a gate that you lift up and the water flows underneath. It's a gate that we push down and the water flows over it, and those are manually operated by the staff of the North Texas Municipal Water District. After the water goes through that first major weir, the water begins to flow through this central section. Now, the water doesn't wind its way through every cell. Notice there are weirs connecting each independent cell, and a row of these cells is called a train. So water is going to go through this train right here. Water is going to flow through here or through here. And after it floats past all of these cleaning implements, we're going to tell you what those cleaning ingredients are in just a second. It collects in the deep water channel down here at the very southern end of the central section. There's another gate. There's the John Bunker Sands Wetland Center where we are filming right now. And then the water slowly flows through the southern section, and it does collect at a deep water channel at the very southern end of the southern section. At that point, there is a conveyance pump station that has 5 3,000 horsepower engines. And those engines propel that water from the southern end of the wetland 43 miles away to the northern aspect of Lake Lavon. We're going to go back to the poster next, and we're going to look at that direction. Told you we were going to come back to this map, so here we are. Like I said, the water is pulled off of the East Fork, sits in the sedimentation basin, goes to the central section, flows through that southern section, and then there is that 43-mile pipe going all the way up to the northern aspect of Lavon Lake. Those 3,000 horsepower engines are needed because all the way from the Wetland Center to the Collin County line, that water is actually going against gravity. From about Collin County line to Lavon Lake, it's just free falling out of the pipes. Now, how long does the water spend going through here? About 7 to 10 days. So it spends 24 hours here, approximate 3 to 5 days here, and approximately 3 to 5 days here. Now, I told you that there was a cleaning process. We know that this wetland was built to clean the water, so now you should be asking yourself, who or what is cleaning the water? Now I'm going to let Daniel pan over to the wetland because it quit raining and you can see a little bit. And I'm going to ask you, do you see a lot of machines doing any mechanical cleaning? Do we see any employees dumping any interesting vats of chemicals in there to clean the water? We don't, because the plants themselves are naturally cleaning the water through a process called phytoremediation. And I know that's a big word for this early in the morning before you may have had your coffee. But the process of phytoremediation is the process that plants, these special plants called hydrophytes, clean the water by pulling out what we consider pollutants in the water, but to the plants they are nutrients. And the main nutrients that these plants pull out of the water are phosphates and nitrates. Now, phosphates are broken down from all sorts of soap products that we use, everything from your shampoo to your dishwasher soap to my bath fizzy that I used last night. And the nitrates are broken down from ammonia, which comes from our bodies in the form of solid and liquid waste. So when our water, that bath water we talked about, remember my bath water, my toilet water, the waste treatment plant breaks down the solids of my waste, breaks down those soap products from my bath bomb, and once those are no longer dangerous to the environment, they are released into Duck Creek, which flows into the East Fork of the Trinity River, and this phosphate and nitrate-filled water then flows into the wetland. Now, the plants don't look at that and go, oh my gosh, that's not very appealing, phosphate and nitrate-laden water. The plants look at that as a liquid, nutritious fertilizer for them to consume. And so they take out those phosphates and nitrates, because those are the ingredients they need to grow stems and leaves in their flowers, and they leave the water cleaner for it. So while this water is drifting through here for that 7 to 10 days, the plants are naturally taking out these impurities, chemicals from our mind, but nutrients from their perspective, and the water is cleaner so that when we pump the water back up to Lake Lavon, it is distinctly cleaner than it was when it got here. Now, we mentioned that the wetland is for cleaning, but the wetland has many more purposes than just cleaning the water. The wetland is also a fantastic storer of water, so wetlands are an excellent prevention to flooding. The other thing wetlands do, which is a really big deal here in the North Texas area, is that because they have the capacity to store this water, it can decrease the amount of water that is flowing so heavily through the Trinity River, and that reduces erosion. So wetlands prevent erosion. Wetlands provide natural cleaning. But the other thing that they do is they provide a fantastic habitat for many creatures. And just because even though we're not having school right now, I'm going to ask everybody who remembers what the 3 parts of a habitat are? Hopefully somebody is typing food and shelter and water. And absolutely, as you can see, this particular body of water is going to be able to provide food, shelter, and water to a great variety of wildlife. Migratory and permanent resident birds. We have many mammal species here, and we have a large variety of aquatic organisms, including fish, turtle, lizards. And if you saw the macroinvertebrate class with Stephanie, we've got water scorpions, crawfish even, and freshwater shrimp. So this particular body of water provides an incredible amount of food, shelter, and water for a great diversity of creatures. If you're wondering how the fish get here and how the crawfish get here and how the river otter or the bobcat gets here, and you're thinking, oh, you must stock the ponds. Absolutely not. All of the creatures that are in the wetland, they are here because they are seeking out those needs of a habitat, and this fantastic area provides them those resources. Well, we've talked about what the wetland is doing. We've talked about how long the water is being here. Let's head back to the map again. Because we need to talk about what we always refer to as a unique partnership. Because we have the North Texas Municipal Water District that has built this wetland, and we have the Sands family that formed this partnership to have the North Texas Municipal Water District able to use this land, and more recently actually sold them the land. That relationship did have some quite unique aspects, and one of those is that part of the agreement is that some land would be set aside to build an education center where students and adults could come here and learn about wetland ecosystems, wildlife ecosystems, bird adaptations. And so they actually built the center that we are operating in today, and they did name it after John Bunker Sands because he was the one that started this amazing legacy of land stewardship. And through the unique partnership of the Sands family and the Water District, not only do we have amazing land stewardship, we have got ourselves an incredible method to have this land take care of one of our limited resources we have, which is water. Ruth, we do have water moccasins. If you have water and you're in Texas, you have water moccasins. They are not a problem for us. They're not really very social snakes, to tell you the truth. And if you know how to identify a water moccasin, since there's no water moccasins in here, I can say this. They're terribly unattractive, and they smell fairly foul. So it's not very common that we have visitors have any run-ins with water moccasins. They're much more likely to see the diamondback water snake, which is a non-venomous, much more social and quite attractive to photograph snake, by the way. And then we have a lot of other non-venomous water snakes. Good question, though. Any other questions that we have about our wildlife so far? Excellent. Well, what we're going to do now is we've talked about the wetland itself, and we've talked about the timing. Let's talk about how long it took to build this. Do you remember me saying that the reason why the Water District actually built this wetland is because it takes many years and billions of dollars to build a new reservoir? When they started construction in 2004, they actually used Bunker's Pond, the pond that you'll be seeing me give a tour at next week, as the nursery to grow millions of these water plants or hydrophytes that are the major workhorses of the wetland to clean the water. Instead of it taking between 15 and 20 years to build, they started construction in 2004 and they completed construction in 2009, and they celebrated 10 years of water cleaning and storing through the wetland for 10 years. All of the plants that are planted in the wetland are actually hand planted, and I think it's probably stopped raining enough that we might be able to open the door and go out onto the porch, because I would love for Daniel to be able to focus. And you can see just in the past few weeks the Water District has been doing some new planting, and it's not too often that it's close enough for visitors to be able to see what it looks like. So I'm going to open the door and we're going to head out to see if we can focus in on some new hydrophytes that were just recently planted and installed by the Water District. And it looks like the rain has stopped enough that it won't be terribly noisy when we go out here. So he's going to focus right in between these two trees, and you see all sorts of little large stems poking up. There we go. All right, and as you can see right there, those stems, those are the wrap stems of the recently planted plants, and that's a mixture. Out there is, which is a beautiful hydrophyte with a very attractive purple flower that happens to attract bumblebees all summer long. If you enjoy seeing bumblebees out here at the wetland. Now that the rain has calmed down, this really is a good opportunity for you to see that we have got some egrets that are flying around the wetland, and you can hear some of the birds in the trees. So it is an excellent habitat for many migratory and residential birds. Well, it is raining a bit, and we don't want to get any water droplets on the camera, so we're going to head back in. To the gallery. Now, when the Water District started construction in 2004, this building wasn't started at the same time. It was a little bit later, because we are not celebrating our 10th anniversary until this October. So 2020 is our 10th anniversary year, but we are in the works right now some fantastic celebrations for us to be able to bring the public in and really share with our enthusiasm that the Wetland Center itself has been educating students and adults for the past 10 years. Well, hopefully I gave you some really good information about the Trinity River, how it's being used here, the construction of the wetland, why the Wetland Center is named after John Bunker Sands, and the relationship between the water resource and the land. The last thing I'm going to do is we talked actually about the fact that the Sands families obviously had ranches here, the Rosewood Ranch, for years. We're going to come over here and look out this window, because there is still a functioning ranch right across the street. So that unique partnership still allows for there to be the opportunity to have a working ranch, to have an education center, and to have a water resource all at the same time. So if you think about it, when you come to visit us, you may be driving on public roads. You're going to enter private property, which is the Sands Ranch, Rosewood Ranch, and then you're going to come onto a nonprofit, which is the John Bunker Sands Wetland Center, and then you're able to walk out onto the boardwalk, which is on a privately owned piece of property, again, owned by the North Texas Municipal Water District. Oh, that's a great question. I won't say alligators. I'll say alligator. Recently, this early spring, we did have proof from the Water District employees that they had seen and photographed an alligator. But I would not say we have alligators. I don't think one really is enough to claim to fame. But they are quite native to this area, and so it doesn't surprise us that we have alligators. But we have something that's almost as cool as an alligator, my friend, and that is that we have alligator gar. In the southern section, do you remember where that is? I'm going to point back in case you want to take a nice long walk, because it is accessible by the public. If you take the nice long walk all the way to the deep water channel at the southern end, there is a fantastic colony of spotted alligator gar. And if you've never seen an alligator gar, it is a fish that's between 1 foot and 3 foot long, covered in spots like a cheetah, has a face like an alligator, and sleeps upside down like a bat. And I don't know a more unique creature that's native to Texas than the alligator gar. So, and they're pretty casual. If you walk all the way out there, be sure you give yourself a good 2 hours for that walk. You can see those beautiful spotted alligator gar in the southern section. Great question. Now, the last thing I thought I would do to kind of wrap this up is just kind of give you, I've got a beautiful picture of John Bunker Sands to let you know that I think that he would be really excited to know that his ideals of land stewardship and really taking into account the economic value of the land and the wildlife, and to know that there's an intrinsic value to take care of them and preserve them. I think he'd be pretty excited to know that now with technology, we're leaving his family's property and we're taking his legacy of stewardship and getting it out there into the internet. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to get even more exposure to let everyone know that there are fantastic Texans that have done very good efforts to conserve and to preserve some beautiful areas of land in Texas, but to actually conserve them while still having the opportunity to take care of our resources. Do I have any other questions from my audience out there? The alligator question was pretty good. All right. Well, I enjoyed the opportunity. Yes? Are the eagles still in the area? They are. And we've been so lucky this year to have one of our stewards, Tom Fleming, take such wonderful photographs of them this whole spring. They are still in the area. They had one eaglet, and he has fledged, so it's very, very unlikely that he's going to go back to the nest. He's been demonstrating a lot of good flight skills lately. Tom did just photograph the family recently on the tower. All 3 of them were on the tower. Social distancing, though. Even bald eagles have got their social distancing down pat. So if you go on to our Facebook page, we probably have 20 to 30 fantastic photos of the eagle family, and they will be here through the end of June. Usually they are well gone before the July 4th weekend or holiday. No other questions? All right. Well, I really appreciate you taking time to learn about the wetland today, and I appreciate your patience with Mother Nature disturbing my pond trail walk a bit, but I really look forward to seeing all of you next Saturday as we head out onto the pond trail, and we will be walking all the way to the East Fork of the Trinity River. I think it's kind of fortunate that we got to do this overview today, because now when I'm talking about the river and I'm giving you more details about the history of the property, you're already going to have a really good basic understanding of exactly what's happening at the East Fork Water Reuse Project and at the John Bunker Sands Wetland Center.
Peter Gray wants to know if we come through the center to access the Southern Walking Trail.
Yes, you need, no matter where you're walking here at the wetland, you need to come in and check in with us. So you don't want to just come in and walk around the building and go to the southern section. And here's the reason why. We want all of our visitors to be safe. And we can't make sure that you are safe if we actually don't know that you're on the property. So all visitors do need to check in with us. That's a really good question. All right, well, those were some great questions. I really appreciate it. And you guys have a good rest of the weekend. And I look forward to seeing you next Saturday when we take the pond trail walk.